This meeting to order and document the time is 6:34. And if you would join me in the pledge, I would appreciate that. Flag right behind everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you and welcome to the September 16 version of our school board meeting. Tori, I would like to turn it over to you for our mindfulness
So I need it.
session.
All right. Okay, so.
Put us in, Coach.
Right. So what we do at the beginning of our meetings is we center ourselves and make sure we remember why we're here, who we're here for, and what cost. So everybody can just settle into their seats and take a nice deep breath in, and you'll feel your spine rise up. And you breathe out and relax. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. And another breath in. Breathe in all the things that have happened for the day. And breathe out sort of a settledness of integration. And just follow your regular breathing pattern. Just finding some space. We come here together to govern for the best of our community, our students, our families. Winooski sits right in the middle of what we do together. And we breathe in a focus. And we breathe out relaxation. And with your next exhale, we come back into the room.
Thank you.
You did that.
Thank you.
Adjust the focus.
Some days it was a hard day.
All right. Next item, agenda review and any adjustments. Anything to move around, change out?
The discussion on groups and changing all that?
Committees?
Yes, committees.
Specifically,
Change. Negotiations.
negotiations, okay. We can add that in section 8. We'll do it at the end of 8.
Community
It goes
engagement.
under here.
7.
Because it'd be under governing style, I think. I could put it at the end of 7.
We'll add a 7E.
The city council meetings and their committees.
Did we get the MOU? We didn't get it in the board pack, did we? The MOU that we're supposed to look over? It wasn't in this. I didn't see it.
All right. And anything else? All right. I believe our focus on learning this evening was put aside in order to give folks time to get something. We've been in school 2 weeks. And we do have a fairly long meeting after taking July off, so I figured that would be a good place. Next section, public comments. Any public comments? Okay. Seeing none. The school board city MOU, we were going to move down here, right, to bring
Okay.
the image piece up.
Oh, yeah.
And did we get the MOU? Is it part of the board packet? I didn't see it.
It wasn't in the email.
It was in the retreat packet.
Ah.
Do you have copies?
We were too
It's-
prepared, I guess.
Okay.
That's fine. We'll find it later. Okay.
So it would be in your email from Tuesday or Wednesday,
Okay, here.
actually.
Sweet, thank you.
So we'll move that piece down. The city was coming late anyway, right? Quarter of
8:15.
eight or so. Okay. And so we're gonna move 5 down to
Oh, awesome.
after section 7,
From Sandy.
and then come back to that consent agenda. I would accept a motion to accept a consent agenda.
So moved.
Any other discussion within that? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes.
Can we just out loud celebrate all the amazing summer opportunities there were for Winooski students?
Summer
That
was
was,
fantastic.
my goodness, that is a huge offering and opportunities for all of our students through the summer.
Sports, food, VYCC, trail stuff, 8,000 different flavors.
I think the
It's a busy
impressive
summer.
thing was 130 kids in for a reading session. It's just a vast number of kids, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, it also makes me think back to our conversation about wellness that we had in our retreat recently, and looking at the whole child, and taking care of all different kinds of aspects of the little human beings that come into the building.
Making good ones going out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's always the mission.
That's the measure.
All right.
Well, that's great.
Okay. So with that, then, we will move into the portion of our meeting where we've set an hour aside for a communications training with our image folks that we had met at the retreat on Saturday. I don't know if you want any other precursor?
I would invite Jamie and Patty to come on up, or just Jamie to start. Yeah. And just a quick bit of context is that they're coming from Image Associates, who are contracted through our Nellie May Education Foundation grant with Burlington School District to provide communications support to our school district, and have done some wonderful work already for us on some video work around student-centered learning and what it's looking like in Winooski, and then also creating some new stories, student stories around student-centered learning, and is now beginning to work with the board and the administration around a strategic communication plan for the future.
Great, thank you.
Great.
So you pretty much just covered this first slide. We wanted to put this, just sort of to clarify, that not only, our primary purpose with the board and with the school district is to help develop a highly strategic, accessible, and sustainable, plan. And the goal of the plan would be to celebrate, engage people, communicate in your efforts and successes towards ensuring that all Winooski students thrive in your student-centered learning environment. In addition, we're here to provide ongoing strategic consulting as you need us. So as things arise, you pick up the phone and call us and treat us like your agency. And also to assist in identifying strategically aligned immediate needs, as we have with the videos, that's what those have been, and to hopefully assist you in getting funding for those needs via Nellie May. And those can also, not only can they be things like videos or a press conference support, but it could be things like transportation and food for a meeting, for a public meeting, or bridge funding for a part-time position that you foresee that you'd be able to keep afterwards. So pretty much anything that would help push your communications efforts strategically now as we go through this process. Hopefully we can help. So just to really, Sean covered this. So we've met with the district and school leadership. We've met and interviewed several students and teachers from middle and high school. We filmed and created Winooski, We Are the Future, the video. This time around, we've been here 4 times in the past year. So we interviewed several students and shot footage for the 3 to 4 student vignettes that are going to be beautiful ways to tell the story of Winooski, to tell their stories in Winooski. Very inspiring students. Attended the school board retreat, conducted a workshop with the leadership group yesterday, I guess. And through that group, and all of everything else before, we've drafted a purpose for your communications plan based on all of your input that we'll show you now, and we've begun a SWOT analysis. So based on our work with you all, this is a draft, that the purpose of the communications plan is to change the narrative about Winooski School's transformation in order to broaden positive perception and gain recognition outside of Winooski regarding your leading role and success in creating an innovative, student-centered, personalized learning environment in which your teachers and community are committed to all students. And this is all draft, this is editable, obviously. Create a sense of pride of Winooski School's accomplishments within your community, staff, faculty, parents, businesses, and other stakeholders, students. Motivate and develop local advocates and influencers through education about Winooski's success, which we know is very well known nationally and within education. So we'd like to work with, the plan will help you work with your own community and nearby communities for them to understand why you've been so successful and how successful you are being. Inform and engage parents and community to be involved and have a voice in their schools. Inspire parents to believe that each child can excel, what they are learning is relevant, and their school experience is supporting them in achieving a meaningful life. Build understanding in the broader community around proficiency-based learning, and recognize and celebrate Winooski's innovative, supportive, and engaging teachers. So we will.
In your very first bullet, inside and outside of Winooski?
Uh-huh.
If, I would think the perspective is as much broadening it inside as outside in the very first bullet.
Broader perception again. Oh, inside and outside, okay.
I think it's just the perspective
Sure.
being.
I think we thought we covered internal otherwise, but
Okay.
absolutely, no, I will, allow me to pull that right up.
I didn't mean to throw off the
Nope, no problem.
flow.
No, that's
No,
why
no,
we're
no, no.
bringing it to you for your input.
Anything else?
You know, as Jamie said, that came about some that we heard from your retreat on Saturday, and then some, Tori and Julian were able to join us this week with some of the staff, school staff, so.
Any other thoughts? It's a lot, right?
Good.
And it's, you know, it's inclusive, and sometimes the purposes for these plans are very bare bones, and I like this because I think it speaks to what we need to look at as we go through this planning process.
Yeah, robust. I would say that the sort of title to change the narrative about Winooski School's transformation, I would say is sort of mixing two things. I would either talk about changing the sort of dominant narrative about Winooski Schools, or I would promote the narrative about the Winooski Schools transformation. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Well, we're probably doing both then, right? We should probably have both?
yeah, right, but I think they're separate. Because I mean, I think what people don't understand is the narrative about the transformation.
So we're changing the prevalent narrative, or what?
Yeah, change the narrative about Winooski Schools, period. You know, communicate about the school's transformation. Or promote the school's transformation, you know, whatever. But
So two
Yeah.
separate.
separate but related ideas. And I don't wanna wordsmith us to death here, but I do think they're two ideas.
Yeah, and you won't see the change up there, but I'm just putting it so we can fix
Mhm.
it for you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything you feel that we've missed?
It's a hefty focus. I think
We've
it
got a lot
hits-
of work to do.
Hits it pretty well.
You know, what we found in Winooski, you know, frankly, we work regularly with 7 school districts and several schools, and we also provide support for another 32 schools and school districts. And and we're not blowing smoke when we tell you that you guys impress us more than anyone. We think this, the diversity and the way your students show how much they've learned and how confident they are. The evidence is there when you talk to any student, teacher, principal, superintendent, any of you. The commitment that you have to this community and to your school, to your students, is just, it's unheard of, frankly. And if every other school district in a larger way could learn how to do this, and you all face your challenges, certainly, but you guys, I think, are, obviously there's a reason you're recognized nationally.
Jamie, I wonder if in the language we talk about the Winooski School District opposed to separate schools, because that's one of the messages that we're trying to both internally and externally say is we're one school.
We were uncertain about that. We went back and forth between
Well,
school
there
single,
are-
school plural,
yeah.
possessive.
Right.
Like when you get into standardized testing reporting and reports to the state,
Right.
we are separate, three separate schools.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to be, we
One
consider
roof.
ourselves unified, and
One
that's a
school.
real
One school or
advantage.
one school district?
One school district,
So you prefer to use the school
the
district?
Winooski School District.
Yeah. why
We
don't you
did,
write that
we
down?
debated that.
You talked about that, yeah.
Yes.
That
At
was
lunch
an
today,
hour.
when we
That
did
was
these
an
slides,
hour discussion.
we literally created these today, and
Yeah.
we went back and forth about that. And
We've been three separate, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
One unit, one,
so one unit as a district.
Yes.
When you refer to the schools, though, do you use school or schools?
It depends.
It depends. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think typically we say, the district, and every now and then we'll say JFK, and we'll say middle and high school.
Right.
Okay.
But when we can, we're moving it towards
Typically, it's,
the district.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Winooski School District, yeah.
Okay, we'll fix that. Anything else?
subtle, but
Understood.
Important.
No, understood.
No, it's not subtle, because we spent.
It's true.
Because it's
It
important.
is important.
It's important how you define yourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we knew that, and we went back and forth on what it should be, so.
Shows how insightful y'all are, that is something to be.
Or, I think there'd be other words to write one.
Yeah.
when the graduation expectations are understood clearly by the kindergarten teachers, it's not a high school thing, it's a
Right.
Yeah.
district.
Right, that's for sure.
District. The ends is district.
So if you'd like us to move on from this,
Yeah.
we certainly have.
Don't mean
Okay.
to take too much.
So we have like a quick messaging exercise, acknowledging that our time is short. One of the things, Patty will hand out some papers.
So you got randomly, you're all gonna get a different question, and it's just random who's getting what, so.
Okay.
No freeze.
So we're going to ask, we're going to have you write down an answer to the question that's potentially being asked of you, and these questions that can be asked of you by different audiences. And the goal here is for us to not only understand the dynamic, but what your existing narrative is, what you're saying now, how you all are describing this
Good, thanks.
dynamic in this school district. And, we did a little bit of this exercise yesterday.
yeah, yeah.
So take your time.
Yeah, I'll wait on this one.
Yeah. And Sean, I don't know if we have time to have people read them out loud afterwards, or if we should go.
You're only 12 minutes in or something, so.
Couple more? Okay, about one more minute. So who would like to share their question and answer first?
First.
Figured I'd add
It
that.
doesn't take anybody off the hook.
No one's off the hook.
I guess I have to.
Okay, Matthew.
Right, I will.
Okay.
Leadership.
You have to.
That'll force somebody else to go. So the question I have is, how does the district balance the specific needs of new Americans with the needs of all students? And this is to an audience of community members of Chittenden County. And I'm going to read this just so I don't ad-lib. So it is recognized that we have a very diverse community in Winooski. We meet that challenge by ensuring that the individual's needs are met. Not all newcomers to Winooski start at the same place on the WIDA scale. Through very personalized inspection, each student is moved along at a pace suitable for them with regular immersion back into the main classroom for a broader perspective of the school. This process creates a very broad educational base in the classrooms that would challenge even the most seasoned teachers. The staff here in Winooski meet this challenge head-on and with pride and professionalism unparalleled, which makes many of our teachers very valuable to other districts. The new Americans bring a perspective back into the classroom that cannot be obtained in any other district in the state and many districts nationally. Leveraging this is a huge benefit to all students.
It's terrific.
Hope I came close.
Terrific. Did anybody have any comments about that? That's wonderful.
I think that's right on.
I think that's a really, the fact that not all newcomers start at the same level is something that people don't inherently understand. And I know that relates to testing and proficiency.
The piece that really got me most is, it used to be called ESL, English as a Second Language.
Right.
A lot of our kids know 2 already, and 3. Parents as well. They're not uneducated, they just haven't learned English
Right.
in a lot of cases. And that, is a testament to these folks coming here to try to dig their way through a new life and learn a 3rd or 4th language in some
Absolutely.
cases, so.
It's a really valuable point. It's
I
great
think
to-
it was great the way that you framed that message. You started out talking about individual starting at levels, everyone being able to go forward the way they needed to. But then you backed it up with some data that you referenced. So it implied that there is information there that supports what you've just said without, going deeper into that, but you did reference that. And then you also took the time, and I don't know if it was because we had put on one of the objectives of your communications is to recognize and celebrate the wonderful teachers you have. But
Yes.
you were able
You
to
took the time to do
incorporate
that.
that in there and brought it back to the resource to which the community is supporting and the teacher. So I thought that was very well
If
done.
anybody is misguided enough anywhere, community, in the state, or anywhere, to think that this board has anything to do with how well this district is being run, they're very misguided. The staff first,
Here.
the administrative team, we're just fortunate to be able to ride it.
Absolutely, I
So-
understand. You guys do great supporting
Right
them.
place, right time with
and guiding them.
great folks.
Okay,
Any other,
next
anyone have
is-
anything to add to what,
anything else to add to that conversation?
or
No?
were you surprised by his response, or?
Nope, right on.
Right on.
Good. Who's
Really
next?
I like the tie into personalization.
Yep.
Oh, I
yep.
do
Like
too,
straight,
definitely.
right at the very beginning of the response,
Mhm.
it immediately turns to like meeting kids where they're in every single student.
Just go to other districts that don't have the breadth of what we deal with here, assuming that all these kids are going to start out at step 1 on the WIDA scale, and just because. And then you miss kids like Indra, who is now on a full ride to Georgetown, working on Bernie's campaign. Folks, I mean, Rainbow, you're not out of this. You're phenomenal. And we've got folks in here that are doing absolutely phenomenal.
Comes from the heart, that's terrific. Okay, next.
Well, I had, why should I choose a Winooski school or the Winooski School District? And my audience was a parent. And I said that the school district is an innovative place, the Winooski School District is an innovative place where each student gets a lot of individual attention. And it's a small school, and yet it has people from all over the world. And there's many languages spoken in the building, and many cultures come together to make our own very unique school district. And I said it's a district that is excited to take on new ideas and to craft an education that is relevant and meaningful for every child.
Terrific. So I love that. Excited to take on new ideas. That's great. That's great messaging. It's true, and it's
Yeah.
really puts it into that perspective of this being an exciting, dynamic place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the type of message that we need to get out. And again, with the individualized attention and people from all over the world, that's terrific. You don't need us.
Well, one thing I think that I have discovered about Winooski is that I feel like sometimes schools are kind of clinging to the past, sort of denying whatever's in front of them, hoping that they could go back to the good old days, make school great again. But we're not doing that.
Well, do you find that your community, every community is different and in a different space as far as how much they embrace new thinking in education.
Yeah.
So in other districts, we struggle with people,
Yes.
reading, writing, arithmetic,
Right.
give them the books.
Right.
I don't understand why they even need computers.
Yep.
They're losing out. We're taking this away.
I want my AP classes.
I want my AP classes. Yeah, and certainly in the larger districts, we get we deal with a lot of that. So, do you feel that in Winooski?
No. I think people are hungry for change, excited about change. I think they're on board.
Mm-hmm. So those biases are really important for us to understand as we help develop your messaging, because in other districts we'd be dealing with very different biases.
Yeah,
and it's a
right,
great
right,
place to
right.
be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I think there is a little bit of a split in the community for those folks that may be older, that had kids here a while back, that do not understand what it is that's going on in the schools. I think that's different than the newer parents, the younger parents of kids that are coming through and they're seeing the changes actually happen. A lot of the longer term residents hang on to what they know was the case some time ago, and don't necessarily see for what it is today.
Versus the new more new Americans would be in that second.
Well, I also
Or do you
think
see both?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
New younger residents who want to move to Winooski for the diversity, for the good vibe and the feel, for the walkable environment, bringing their kids into the district.
Yep.
I think there's also this sort of national, broader clinging to the old ways of education.
Yeah.
And for those of us that can recognize that it didn't work for people whose lives were touched by poverty, race, or disabilities, that a new way is the only way. Because we were clinging to something that didn't work for everyone. It worked for some. And so, but there's this idea that it did. We want to cling to that idea that it truly was meeting everyone's needs, when we can look and see that it wasn't. So Winooski has this open space to be able to say, we can do this differently, and we welcome change and complications, because we are new and complicated. I don't know, we can match that sort of new way of navigating.
Yep.
How do we educate? What's relevant about education now? How can we look at this new place?
Well, and the notion, we're small, and that is a great advantage I love that about the elementary school for my kids, because they get a lot of attention from each teacher that they have. And of course, when you get to Rainbow's age, small, still means a lot of attention, but it also means there's more limited opportunities in a strictly traditional model. And I think that we're sort of taking on that challenge and looking at different ways to make not have smallness be a disadvantage in that sense.
I think the continuity that you have here, with really the kids all being pretty much in this building and together for so many years, I've got to believe that leads to a general acceptance earlier on. And in a lot of districts, this concept of these new types of learning, based on the fact that professionals in the industry know that what we had didn't work for those in poverty and with disabilities, based on ethnicities, but a lot of the communities don't. However, I think that I'm seeing that the continuity here sort of creates this community where it becomes an expectation. They understand it sooner. These other districts that are starting in high school, so the kids have kind of come up with more traditional learning until they hit 9th grade or, or 8th grade in transition, and they're starting to see things change. And it's a lot more difficult that way. So I think you guys have that in your favor.
One interesting dynamic with that, to that point though, is we do have a 25 to 30%, a 25% turnover
I
rate.
just said that,
I
yeah.
don't know if that's slowed down much over the
Mobility?
years.
Yeah.
Mobility,
Yeah,
yeah,
about a
moving in
third,
and out of the
yeah.
district, it's about a third
Is it a
during the
third?
year, which is a big,
Which is a
number.
big-
You've gotta understand what you've got coming in quickly and be able to put them in an appropriate spot
Right.
as they do come in, because
Sure.
they come in all through the year
All
as
through
well.
the continuum, sure.
So that
Good point.
Yeah.
One of the comments earlier about people's beliefs about education, it reminds me of kind of the national conversation about implicit bias that's happening a lot around law enforcement, right? It's like all of us carry these attitudes, beliefs that come from our own background and our own experiences, and sometimes they manifest in ways that we don't even know or understand. And I think that plays out through our beliefs about education too, because we all went through the system that we went through, and we had the experience that we had. And as soon as we start talking about education, we kind of go back to that, and that's where we tend to live.
Right, and if
And
it
so
worked for
breaking
us.
through a little bit or bringing awareness to that implicit bias from our own experiences, I think part of this plan is how do we do that with people.
It also reminds me of thinking that the grasping to the old way, making schools great like they used to be, is that idea that schools served high achievers or kids that could perform well in schools. And the new way, it also reminded me of that poster about disabilities where if you shovel the ramp first, everybody can get up. But if you start with the stairs, only people who can use the stairs can get up.
We were just looking at that
Where
poster here yesterday.
personalized learning and student-centered learning is shoveling the ramp for everybody, high achievers. It's meeting everybody's needs.
That's a great way to frame it.
And I think that when you put the kid in the center of their own learning, and it's about their relationship with themselves in relationship with content or whatever it is that we're studying or learning in that interest piece, they're going to go further than we would have imagined. There was still a limitation in the old way of school, like you could only achieve so much. But when it's personalized and there's opportunities and routes that are created because we can't have this class here, it almost goes in, the potentiality for it to go in a direction that we could have never have imagined opens wide up.
Anything else,
I think
John?
one of the, I'd like to piggyback. I have one story, and that is probably 4 years ago now, we were in a budget session and the administrative team came and asked, came give us the things that they wanted to have in the budget, take out of the budget, put in the budget. And Leon, the high school principal, came in and said, we're going to take these 2 classrooms and we're going to disband them next year. We're going to put in this thing called iLab, and then we're going to go on. I said, okay, well, what's the iLab, Leon? He says, well, I don't know, but we know that it's something different, something unique, and something we're going. And so what I love about this, and my sister and I talked about this a lot, is that if Winooski is small enough, back to your point,
Yeah, that you can
where you can come up with something on Monday, figure out what you're going to do with it on Tuesday, implement it on a Wednesday, evaluate it on Thursday, fail on Friday, and be back Monday to do something different nobody noticed. and you still keep going. And the good things you keep. And I think the staff is, feeling now more than they have in the last 10 years, able to step out of the norm, do something a little bit different, see what happens, but maintaining this basic, the constant that says we're going to give the kids we're not going to jeopardize anybody's education, but we're going to do things that are a little bit different and try them.
Do you think that concept of, this open space where you can try new things, this small community in which you can do that, do you think that there's a balance with people thinking or saying, yeah, but you're not going to experiment on my kid, right? I mean, do you feel that tension in that?
That has to be in the background always,
Right.
which means that you've got to be able to utilize the things in there that, and Sean, I'll leave this to you, but I think you can't make a radical thrusting change that's going to disrupt the whole works. It's going to moderate course corrections rather than left turns.
And have you had any of those? Have you experienced any of that, or?
To me, the iLab was the biggest left turn we've had, and it just turned out to be one of the best things we've done for a proven experiment that allowed us to use some of those techniques back into the regular classroom in a different situation.
It is wonderful, yeah.
Kind of expand it a little bit differently.
So was there any pushback, though, is what I was, when that
There is
happened?
always pushback.
Yep.
Whenever you're taking on significant
Yep, expected, absolutely.
educational, instructional changes that are happening, there's always going to be.
Right.
Because it's the analogy of kind of fixing the airplane while you're flying. Right? We don't have a chance, to kind of say, okay, we're going to take 9 months
Choose the
and
airplane.
we're going to stop what we normally do, and we're just going to research and plan.
Right.
So and it probably wouldn't work that well anyway without students to work with. So that's always a challenge, and I think communication is a challenge around that because you're so enmeshed in doing the work. And the important thing is to see it as a continuous improvement cycle and to take the feedback and to engage people in that conversation and learn and try to keep people as calm as you can.
Right.
Which is hard because you're talking about
And
their
as
kids.
engaged, yeah, absolutely.
I can add to that as I have kids in high school that have been going through the change. And so every year it's a little different.
Yeah.
And I have a junior and a senior, and I have 2 in college that left 2 years ago, right? Yeah. And so like the iLab first coming out, I think they were freshmen or sophomores. So Victoria and Jake's sophomore.
4 years.
Junior year?
Junior, yeah.
Yeah. And the changes with the iLab, it was great. We acquired a turtle out of it. Or a tortoise.
Tortoise, 100-year-old.
And a turtle for every child in the
Tortoise for everything.
And
One to one.
it's great, but then you get to see like the hiccups of the program and how to fix it moving forward for the next year. And so it's a work in progress, and all the new stuff, as a school board member, knowing what's coming and then watching the kids go through it, it's easy to like give, let teachers know and staff know like this might be something that needs to be addressed a little bit more, or it's challenging.
Right,
But
and that's valuable insight,
growth,
though.
and I think it makes the students more accepting of change, and I think they'll be better in lifelong terms because they'll be able to move from one thing to another easier rather
great
than
point.
just
That's a great
stuck
point.
in that little box of traditional way of learning.
Right, it's more like the real world.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
It's
It
a
is
really
like
good
the
point.
real
As you go. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we're not the perfect school, obviously. Like, a lot of things make it seem like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, that's cool. But, like, I mean, everyone has flaws, and we make
course.
mistakes, which is why, even though a lot of students feel like we're guinea pigs, I mean, that's always going to be the thought that runs through people's minds, because in order to adapt to the real world and real world situations, you're going to be a guinea pig to
We're
many
all guinea
situations.
pigs.
Especially the way it's changing.
Yeah,
As
exactly.
fast.
And so I think, like, this year especially, I've seen a tremendous change from freshman year to now as a senior, and it's just incredible in
Yeah.
3-4 years that we've implemented so much, which is definitely a pace where students are kind of frustrated at, but we're getting a lot better with adapting and getting used to the changes.
Terrific.
So I think that's when you first gave your point, Mike, and you kind of referenced, a data that, how you evaluate where students moved and what they needed. So everything is always based on information, some data, some research, we're talking about the iLab. So you took that and then you moved it forward. Then you took in more data, input from parents, input from students, and evolved it. So it's not like it's just the grand experiment taking place here. It is informed. It is moving forward, and so if you can always keep referring back to that, and it is you are risk takers, and you are helping your students to be risk takers too, and you need to do that.
Informed. Risk
Informed.
take.
Informed.
Always informed.
And is it Matthew or Mike? Because I called you Matthew. It's Mike.
What's that?
I called you
Mike.
Matthew.
Oh,
Sorry about that. I
call
don't know
me
where I got
anything.
that from, so I apologize.
I'm flexible.
I know the name, but
Yeah, that's
his
right. He'll answer you. That's
I
okay.
got that. Sorry about
But yeah, so I think you've got that. You understand that, and
And one of our future discussions with you will be to go more in depth about these biases that you've all experienced and that you have insight to. So I really look forward to more of that from, Jen and Rainbow especially. I'd like to hear more about that. So who's next?
I'll go next because I don't like my question at all.
Good.
Just get it out of the way.
Yeah, let's just get it out of the way because I didn't even write much down. So it says, how are the services provided to the New Americans funded? Audience is the local businessman. Well, I am not the financial person at all to be talking to, and I would probably put that right out there. So I'm pretty sure that we're funded by a lot of federal and state grants and monies from them. But as a board member, I think as a district, we look at where the money comes from, and I would revert them to the ELL director and the superintendent and not really take that question on as a board member at all because that's not my forte and that's not my job.
So a very big part of communications is knowing when to do that. And that was the right answer. The last thing that you don't need to
That was a
have
trick
answered.
question.
I'm watching everyone write and I'm like,
But you could say, I can
This is
get
a
you, I'll
sh-
get you.
absolutely, absolutely. I can
Right,
get
right.
you that information and I can direct you to the right place, but I am not, I mean, I know like the basic concept of it and the bills and all that, but how much is coming from this part or that part? No.
No, it frankly was a little bit of a trick question. So, so the lesson here is really, especially as a board member, people, I'm sure, are compelled to ask every possible question. Is tomorrow a snow day? To how is it funded, right? And you absolutely do not need to be the people to answer those questions. And, first of all, many are not within your role. But also, if you don't know the answer, better to say, I don't know. That's not really part of my role. I can find out, or I can direct you to the person to answer that, and I will help you find that information.
And making sure to follow up to that they did get in
That they got
contact
the-
with someone.
Absolutely.
That becomes
Right.
the biggest
Follow
piece
through,
from
so
a
they-
board
Yeah.
perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. So they know they can rely on you.
Yep.
Perfect. Anyone have anything to add? We don't need the answer to the question per se, so we're.
Oh, come on, Sean.
It's not a bad idea to have something about that in our communication plan. Just because that is a question that comes up. It's not like
Yeah.
people don't ask it.
And there are good answers for it.
But
I
there are
think
good
there
answers.
are.
Informed answers for it.
Given what
You know
Kirsten
that.
But
was
Rebecca
saying.
would be
We
the
were
best
talking
one
about
to
it
inform
yesterday.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think,
Like a little elevator speech.
Well,
on
but
that.
you did answer some of it, which
Yeah.
was absolutely correct,
Federal and
is
state.
that there are state
And
and
there's a
federal
lot
funds.
of programs in the community
Right.
for New Americans also that help them get
Right.
acclimated into their environment in the school districts.
I think one of the important points, whether it's a board member or administrator, is that with the way that ed funding is in Vermont, there's additional weight given to the equalized pupil count, which equates to more money coming in, which then, if we didn't have that, would equate to a higher tax rate for the community.
Yeah, that's-
So because we do have that, the tax rate is lower than it would be without it.
Right, which is answering, I think, the concern that's behind that question.
Exactly.
Right,
what's
right.
behind that.
Right.
New
Right.
Americans
Taxes.
cost more money. They're
Right.
not paying more
Right.
taxes because we have new Americans here.
Yeah.
And the answer is not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the most part, there will be sort of key messages surrounding we'd foresee you all having a Q&A, just sort of to have access to a lot of answers. What you don't want is for people to go into things that they really don't know enough about and kind of get cornered, especially that was a question from a business person. So that, while the tax dollars certainly are part of that, there may be other thinking behind that as well. So to be cognizant of, who's asking the question, to know the basic answer, and then to be able to get more information without having to memorize answers to every question that could be asked, And also there are we work on things like phone trees and different types of levels of responsibility, who talks to the media, it's tempting, I'm sure, in a small town especially, for the media to call anybody.
they call everybody when
And
they call.
everybody.
Yeah, it's a
But,
blanket.
the problem is that everybody doesn't necessarily know the answer.
We don't answer.
Yeah.
We
We've got a
direct
good-
them.
A
Good,
good flow.
yeah. Well,
Doing well,
you
certainly.
can't, everybody can't possibly, yeah. All right.
So you did better than you thought you were.
See?
She gave that to you on purpose, no?
Probably.
Just.
So she heard something I probably told her yesterday.
All right.
That's why she even gave me a pencil to write.
Right, so you'll need an eraser for that one.
Who's next?
Who's next?
I can go next.
Okay.
Mine was with so much diversity in the schools, how are my child's individual needs supported? And the audience is white/native parents. And for this one, I said diversity is one of the many things that make us here at Winooski incredibly unique. In the state of Vermont, our population is, I've probably repeated this statistic at least 30 times this year, is 98% white/Caucasian, and 2% is of non-white or biracial race. And a lot of that 2% resides in Winooski and Burlington. In comparison to other schools, Winooski students are exposed to many different cultures, ethnicities, and languages. They have the world in their small school of 850-ish, and it's something that you simply cannot find elsewhere in Vermont. And a student is able to become a global leader and international champion, eliminating many stereotypes and even racist opinions simply because this was the environment that they grew up in or even studied a few years in. And children have global engagement, but also economic engagement by being able to work with others who face extremely difficult obstacles in their life because of the economic status of their families. And once again, this incredible experience is hard to find and extremely unique in Vermont. So diversity is never a bad thing and can't possibly ignore or break needs and skills of children, and it'll help children develop to become amazing people.
It was beautiful. Beautifully written.
That's great.
I think there are 3 taglines in there, by the way, if you ever need a tagline. They have the world in their small school. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Gave me goosebumps there. Rainbow.
Yeah. Anyone like to add to that, or? Looking for a job in communication?
Drop the mics.
Yeah, mic drop. This is terrific.
I just keep thinking of the, students coming out, getting into the workforce and having to deal with different people of different work ethics, people of different, viewpoints than yours, and you've got that discussion right here. You're well prepared to deal with it. Somebody coming out of a very homogeneous group into a workforce, going to struggle a little bit when you deal with somebody that's got very different views or, that you haven't seen yet.
Right.
Take
we're
some
all
time to
equipped.
adjust.
Yeah.
So.
And, Shauna talked about our own biases, our own experiences. And if we only experience what we already know, there's no changing that bias. There's no broadening that experience. And so this does that and more.
You ready?
So Matt had the opposite.
I did. It's so hard to follow Rainbow, though.
Get used to it. We struggle with that on a regular basis.
That's right.
My question was, how is Winooski High School viewed by colleges? So my response was, Winooski School District is viewed as open to collaboration with higher education. WSD is viewed as having a relatively small but highly diverse graduating class of students who are prepared with college-ready and or vocational-ready skills. WSD produces graduates with a world focus beyond that of their same age peers across the state. And Winooski School District produces students who have received personal care, support, and guidance about choosing the next steps in their academic or vocational careers.
That's great. Terrific. Anybody, anything?
Sure, you haven't been down for a while.
I think the interesting piece to that as we move forward is and I think it exists in the college. When we had our college ready forum, we had UVM Champlain, St. Mike's, CCV, and College of Pharmaceuticals up here. They're looking, interestingly enough, for kids that can work in groups, can learn how to learn, that know how to learn. And the biggest concern that we had was, are they going to accept proficiency-based grading? This kid's proficient, but I don't see an A, B, C, or D. And, they answered that pretty directly, that they are working to try to work through that in their own worlds to try to understand how to take them. A lot of the future results in looking at the past, too. So they believe what they're going to get is what they have gotten. So that's got to be strong.
And even a lot of Ivy League schools have changed their admissions processes to incorporate, what we used to call soft skills.
Grit.
Absolutely, yeah.
measured precisely to the 10th of a whatever. Yep. How you do that, but.
I like how you turned one of our sort of basic elements of DNA into a comparative advantage, you know, the exposure that our kids have to the world is much greater than their peers.
Let's see, who's left?
Now Julian.
I read.
He already did.
I believe it's
You're in.
just you.
You're the closest to get out of this.
And I'm sure you have 2 pages over there.
Okay, so mine is with so much diversity in schools, how is my child's culture supported? And my audience is a new American parent. And I said that the district honors all cultures, and that I kind of had some other thoughts as I was listening to everybody, but as I was writing, one way WSD supports your child's culture is through strong ELL programs staffed by highly trained teachers and overseen by an ELL director who also oversees the curriculum district-wide. And the other way specifically would be through the hired liaisons, which act as a bridge between families and schools. And that the liaisons are, cultural liaisons are from different cultures to help bridge that, and also to recognize there's an English liaison, because I feel like Winooski recognizes that school is a culture itself. And so therefore, supporting a child's culture means that we are, you are one of us, we are all in this together, but there's a personalization, and that we are all walking into this culture, and we're all building bridges to understand what's expected of us, how we interact, what we can get from the system, how the system supports us, so that there's sort of this translation of the school culture for all. So while I feel like a child's culture will not necessarily be, how do I say it, stand out in a way, it's that you will experience it being personalized. It is honored, it is integrated, and it is personalized. So I would say.
I like that.
Beautiful.
Honored, integrated, and personalized.
Integrated.
Anybody have anything to add? That was perfect. Beautiful. Yeah, that was another tough one to beat. So, from a key messaging standpoint, really this group has incredibly consistent answers because they're true, right? So the biggest part of messaging is to make sure you're telling the truth. And branding is to make sure you are who you claim you are. So the language is consistent, highly consistent, and positive and informative and very well articulated. So that makes our job easy of sort of just kind of gathering it into one place and going for even finer consistency and clarification and making the language as accessible as possible for these audiences. Sometimes we tend to talk a little pretty much over our audiences because of our intimate knowledge of what we're talking about. And that will make it easier for us to get to the end result, which is how do we get this message out, and helping you get all of these messages out to all the right people consistently.
Right.
Right?
In proactive ways opposed to.
And proactive, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And the reality is we know that you're very short on resources, and who's going to do it? We can't afford to do it, and we're so busy being reactive that we need to help you think proactively so that there's room for that within the reality. So it's 7:32. That gives us.
We got one more.
We have one more.
We have the.
We only have 10 more minutes, so.
Resources long.
Well, we wanted to, see where we're thinking here. I want to collect these though, because these are for
Right.
us. You did our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now write the plan.
Do I get your artwork too?
You do.
So just.
But we know that these were the
Pass them down,
questions
I'll
that
hand them
we came up with based on our discussions with you over the last couple of days. But we know you as the board and you as community members have questions or are asked questions. And we'd like to consider those as we're trying to put together some messaging. So we would like you to take a couple of minutes and just jot down some questions that you think need to be answered and have opportunities to be answered. So I'll give you each a little sheet to just jot those down. I'll give you
So,
two.
since we're short on time, though, I wonder if we can actually have a brief discussion while you're doing that.
Sure.
And knowing that you can, email us at, I know Tori and Julian have our cards, and I'm I have a few more, I'm not sure I have enough, but email us ideas and email us information. The more we know, the quicker we know it, the better off we'll be. But the quick discussion I wanted to have was that our next step should be to create a communications committee. We don't want to leave here without discussing this because, you know, we're on a roll and we need to continue, meet with you guys as often as possible and continue to push this forward. So typically, we would ask the superintendent to help us to create a small communications committee. I think one of the things here, in that we would meet monthly and then report back to the board and gather input from the board and sort of do that throughout the process to keep everybody engaged and, you know, to continue to move this along without adding to the board's burden any more so than you feel necessary. So I wanted to just kind of find out what you think that committee would look like and how we can move forward to create that committee. Sean, will you tell me what you're thinking while they're writing?
Well, after the retreat and seeing what is on the plate of the board, given 2 sets of negotiations, a budget year with a lot of uncertainties, I think, at the moment, and all that's already in the annual agenda plan, I think your suggestion of keeping in like monthly communication, but really mitigating the burden of the board is a good message. So I guess my thinking would be that the question for the board would be, would a board member or two be a part of that active monthly committee, or would it be purely at the administrative and other levels, and then the reports would come to the board in written form monthly or every other month, and then Image would come back periodically to present in person when there's enough product, I guess, to report out on.
You know, and ideally, we would like to see, certainly Leon in that group, at least one teacher. I mean, recognizing time is limited.
Mm-hmm.
We can, if a stipend is needed for that, we can ask Nellie Mae to support that. Encouraging student voice, parent voice, community voice, the more who are engaged, and that doesn't have to be every meeting either, but when we discuss what are the questions that you have, what are your concerns, trying to understand biases. The more diverse that committee is, the better off we'll all be. Maybe Rainbow has more time.
I like the second choice that Sean laid out there. That
Just the admin team
yeah,
getting it organized and bringing it back to the board
Mhm.
periodically.
yeah, and I'm not
There's-
even opposed also to a few sort of extraordinary meetings, like extra meetings. I don't know, quarterly or every now and then with one or two of us. But yeah, I think more monthly commitments is probably not happening.
And I feel like with the some added meetings, because there were 3 things we walked away from the retreat, obviously
Yeah.
negotiations, obviously budget cycle, but outreach and narrative
Yeah.
and communication
Yeah,
is,
big one.
from my perspective, like big for us. So I certainly could see being more involved in some ways, because I feel like that is something that we've all kind of, as a board, struggled with that outreach and that
Yeah.
linkage to ownership and linkage to stake. Like, that is our role too.
Yeah.
So I think there's some reasons why, one of us should be more actively involved, because and I don't know if it's in with the administration, but I feel like we have our own reasons for communicating and seeking that outreach.
Yeah.
In the
And
community.
obviously in conjunction with,
Right.
but we would be coming at it from different angles, but kind of speaking the same out.
And you're making me think
So-
that maybe, sometimes we save 5 minutes at the end of our meetings for our community outreach conversation. Maybe we need to put in a little more time and be a little more strategic now
Yeah.
that we have a little more background education and
Right.
clarity around how to unify the message and think about the venues we want to push it out in.
And that's what I agree. Like, I feel like that is where I certainly can put, because I'm not on negotiations. So I certainly would love to put some time in, because I feel like that is one obstacle that we've that I've experienced on being on the board for 5 years, is that ability to communicate in truly an authentic and meaningful way, connect with our community and connect with messaging is something we've struggled with. So I think it's a worthwhile
It's visibility,
time
too.
for our board to do that. That is I feel like our next big leap.
But I don't
To-
think
to-
I think it
to
fits with
strengthen.
our mission, our.
It does. It's a part of our role is to reach out, and I think a strategic way of doing that in community, because we've tried all of these other amazing ways, and some of them has totally worked, and I think that aligning and that narrowing in efficiency, is worth the effort.
So what I'm thinking in hearing this is when you get to kind of reaffirming board committees again, and I don't know if you're going to do all of them tonight or if it's just the negotiations.
Just negotiations
Okay.
tonight.
So maybe at a future meeting, since the two of you started, if it comes out, you could be members of that committee and we could invite you to those meetings and then you come when you can. So that, because I think it would be important, it would be ideal to have somebody, a board member who is, really
It is.
heavily involved in this.
Yep.
It's important. It is. It's important.
That
Yes.
would be, it's
Critically important,
terrific that you're willing.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
So we can put something together
We
with
will.
kind of a timeline and a composition of
And we'll-
committee and everything
Yeah,
and bring
and
that back next month.
Yeah, I think we're probably coming back quarterly here.
Yep.
So we can Skype monthly meetings and we can
Yep.
come back quarterly and do whatever's needed then.
Great.
But I guess, so that kind of committee would not be like a nighttime committee, right? That would be a daytime committee?
Most likely.
But from my perspective, I don't know, probably not for you, but for me, that makes it actually more
Right.
palatable.
Appealing.
Yeah, and I can share in that too. Yeah,
You
yeah,
can?
yeah. We can
Okay.
tag it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because these are the hard ones, away from
Right.
the
Right. Family.
kiddos and stuff.
Yeah.
So that changes a little bit if I think about it.
So we'll,
If anybody had any that they wanted to give me now. Thank you.
Good.
Oh yeah.
This one on the side of the
Sounds surprised.
Yeah.
thank you guys so much. It was really great
We
learning
thank
from
you.
you all and
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
speed dating with you for the past 3 days.
Well, it's not even that speedy. You guys have been really,
Because the
Yep.
school building would make you
immersed.
who you are.
Yeah, we have.
Hopefully we'll leave Winooski a little
like
better than when we.
that to
I like
me.
the structure of how school, like how you
We'll
live.
be glad to see us going.
We'll always moving forward.
Hey, there's check
For all
out-
them to come to the table with us.
If we don't, we certainly can find them. Even if we
I've had
have to-
a ex.
Hey, can we take just a super 30-second break?
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone
Yep.
get a-
First piece.
something to drink?
We will now move to Rainbow with a student report to the board. And then I understand you will then want to go and try to get some rest, so.
Yeah, I'm a
After
little
busy
tired.
weekend. All right.
All right, guys. So I'm all by myself just for today. I'm sad. I miss Ladanya a lot. So yeah, new school year. It's my final 14th year in the Winooski School District. I've been here since preschool.
Wow.
Oh God, it's been a journey. So first of all, I'm just gonna say something real quick. A pretty important student thing that occurred over the summer as the Youth Leadership Institute. It was described briefly in the superintendent report, but a bunch of students from Winooski and Burlington went to UMass Amherst for the annual Youth Leadership Institute conference, where basically we discuss student leadership, student voice, college career readiness, and etc. And so we had 7 students representing the high school team and 3 other Winooski students representing the Diversity Rocks team. And we brought back ideas that actually will be in full swing and will be implemented this year. So one of those ideas is this unique Humans in New York inspired Winooski Sideways blog. And so it's going to be capturing images and discussing and having conversations with students, teachers, citizens of Winooski and the community about how they got there and kind of career exploration in a sense and becoming inspired by our own community. And so that's one idea. It's going to be started by a student. And another thing is half-day changes. A concern that we had as students that was commonly shared was that we don't have enough time in our school year to really discuss the why are we doing these changes in the school and like making clear sense of it, because oftentimes it's miscommunicated or misunderstood. And another thing is exploring career opportunities without having it shoved down our throats. And so really taking a nice pace at discovering like who you are, and without having the pressure of you should go into STEM because it makes money,
Yeah.
or like you should not become a musician because you will not make money, etc.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah. So that was the Youth Leadership Institute. It was a big part of the summer. The back to school barbecue was awesome. Food from our new community garden as well. It was delicious. And I saw a few of you there. It was really nice. Lots of people attended. In the Burlington Free Press released on Sunday, we have 2 students from the Winooski High School as academic all-stars. One of those is Keenwin, and one of those is me. I forgot to bring the newspaper because I was in a rush to get here, but it's awesome, and I gotta say, it was fun, even though I was slightly rushed because Key already submitted the thing, so I was like, oh, I don't have my senior photos yet, wait up. And I still don't, but whatever. So that's in the Burlington Free Press. It's in the papers, not the website yet. Washington, D.C. A student got to go to Washington, D.C. on Monday. That was me as well. It was for the Next Generation High School Summit, in which a group of students from around the country, college and high school students, met and we're able to learn more about advancing opportunities and really learning what it's like to be a next generation high school and how we can move all high schools in the country forward with that. And so I got to shake hands with Secretary John King, and that was the coolest thing.
Wow.
And so I'm really tired from that trip, as you can tell. Sports, varsity girls, awesome. They're 2-1 right now. JV girls are 0-1 right now. Varsity boys are 3-0 undefeated. Middle school boys are 2-1, and middle school
soccer?
Yeah, soccer. Sorry. And middle school girls are. I did not get an update on that, but I believe they are 1-2 or 2-1 as well. And so now, sorry for rushing, but I'm apparently on a tight schedule, so I want to get to this, which is the most important part. And this is the student representative application process.
To fill the empty seat for the student rep on the board.
Fill that empty seat next to you.
Woo, I said that real quick. Okay, so just take one and pass it on.
Okay.
You can ignore the front page. It's just like a quick letter overview of what this whole role means and the short, brief history about what it's like. The most important thing that you should focus on is the phases and the process to getting these student representatives, because obviously the school board has a role on this. And so what I had, I introduced that application and opened it up to all freshmen, sophomores, and juniors on Friday. So far I've received 1 application, and I have noted 8 other people who will be applying. And there's plenty more who I'm sure are interested. And so phase 1, students are given note of the new process. And then phase 2 and 3 are the most important things that I'd like to discuss. So I wasn't exactly sure how, what order it would go in, but obviously it has to include all of us in this. And not only that, the student representative is appointed to the school board, and so has to be appointed by one of you. But one of the things that Sean and I have been discussing is whether or not it'll be voted upon by you guys or following with this process. So currently I have it so that applications will be due September 23rd, which is a Friday. And then I will look at it with Leon and Sean before sending it over to you guys. Basically, we're just making sure there aren't any red flags and making sure it's completed applications. And then we'll send these applications anonymously, so although names will be whited out, to you guys. And you guys will pick a handful of students, whether it be 3 out of, say, 10 or 5 out of 20, and so on. So that is my process. And then the finalists that you guys select will be given 1 week to prepare a quick speech as to why they should be the student rep to represent the student body in front of the student body. Because obviously, if you're going to be the student rep of the school, you should represent your body. And your students, your fellow peers, have to make sure that you will represent the body. And that's a huge change from our previous process. And I wanted the students to make the final vote. And then Sean and I were discussing whether or not it'll stick with this process, and you guys will just appoint what the students pick, and so on. So please give me feedback.
I like the whole idea of if you're representing the student body, the students should decide this. And the fact that, I mean, this is kind of this is a rigorous process.
It is.
But I love how you said it looks complicated, but it's really not that bad. At the end, that's awesome. But the fact, I mean, I love the fact that they need to give a quick speech, because that is about that effective oral communication. I mean, it kind of leans right into that, being able to use your voice and say that.
I mean, you also shouldn't be afraid to like speak to a scary bunch of adults who aren't scared.
What did you just, no. So I guess my input would be in phase 2, school board making a decision to pick several candidates. I would think that since our next meeting after this is going to be October 2nd, Wednesday, which is after your time horizon, giving that feedback back to you and putting it into the pool would not be, we can't make a decision as a board outside of a meeting, but we can give input individually back to you and Sean as the process owners individually as part of a broader collection of input that you get and make a decision with. So, you know, that you may want to just look at that as a, you know, sending it out, having us give you feedback individually and blind copied, not with, you know, so just make sure that it's not all a collective input, so we don't want to be talking outside of a meeting about it.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So if we were doing individual feedback, then I would tally up like which students received the most votes by the board members, like which of the board members selected, say student 1 had like Tori and Julian wanted like this student as one of their handful, and then student 2 had say like 3 of us. And so on. So I would pick the ones that have the most tally marks on to continue on.
And you're getting a majority vote rather than
I would get like the top
still
5.
blind.
I like the loop. You know, I mean, you're starting and you're going to the students and doing the recruiting and getting, you know, the information out there, and then it comes through, and there's a lot of kind of vetting touches on it, you know, with you and I and Leon, and then it comes for board input, and then it comes back. And you know, I'm wondering a little bit about the timing and the turnaround and whether or not there will be enough in order to get them here for the October board meeting. And the other piece that I'm wondering about is, so after the speeches, how is a selection made? Is it just a pure vote of A, B, and C ballot, and then you go from there? And if that, at that point, you know, one of the concerns that you had voiced to me was like, oh, we don't want this just being like the typical popularity contest. So has the process kind of eliminated that component with all those different steps?
Yeah, what do you guys think of that? 'Cause it's kind of like going coffee filter.
Yeah, I feel like with the fact that you need to fill out an application and to do a speech, I feel like that
Weed out.
Yeah, you know, you have to be pretty intentional about wanting to do this. So it seems like the ones that are going to take the time to do it and stand in front of the student body and express themselves, it's going to do that sort of popularity, kind of like, because I also think that you've been really clear, and there's been a history here already to indicate what the role is and why the role exists. You know, so hopefully that diminishes that whole popularity.
Yeah, and especially since like student voice is getting more and more important as years go on, this role becomes much, much more important as years go on. And this year there's going to be a lot more things that we can do, and really I'm trying my best to get better representation, because I've heard feedback from students saying that like we're not doing good representation in previous years, because I mean LaDanya and I, we are really good friends, and we don't really merge out into other groups. We're very like inclusive, and even though, and not only that, I'm an overachieving student. Like, I try my hardest to achieve high, but I want students that might not even do well in school or like have struggles in school, and so that's why I'm opening the application up to everyone and hoping that we can get that. And so far, it's been successful based off of the people I have noted. Like, they're not all high achieving students at all.
That's good. I think the intentionality of diverse voice is obvious through this process, and I like how you say that the vetting and the circling around is great.
How are you going to hold the vote itself?
At the end.
Yeah.
So we have a community meeting scheduled on October 7th, and that's when the finalists will be giving their speeches in front of the student body, and so it's also not like wasting too much class time. It's already scheduled, and I'll be counting the votes myself, I guess.
Just like a table with like paper and
Yeah. So it's
Bring
like
Price Waterhouse in to certify the.
so like this student is student A. If you want to vote for them, write A on your paper and then fold up the ballot and put it in this big box, and I'm guessing, like, I want this to be at like the top of the schedule so that I can take the rest of the community meeting to count all the votes.
And you think you can be ready to have someone fill the chair by our next meeting?
Oh yeah, the students are really excited.
Back to the
Great.
back to the overachieving nature.
Great that there's excitement.
Good. No, I
mean, it's a pilot, so I'm hoping that if this process is successful, we'll continue it for when I graduate, and so on.
Thanks for
the biggest sense for whether something really works well or not is have you leave it and see it keep going.
yeah.
So that's good. This
And you
looks
can do
like
it at the end of
it'll
the
do
year
it.
Thanks
before
for-
you even leave.
putting some thought into it. This
Okay.
is great. Some action and thought. Yeah.
And so individual feedback's totally okay. I'll have it emailed out around September 23-ish. So check your emails, please.
You've set the bar high. I hope someone is ready.
I need a pal.
Ringo, I have a question about your. You went to Arkansas this summer, right?
Oh yeah.
And you presented something at the conference?
Yeah, I presented a 10-minute, 12-minute, 15-minute speech about student voice and basically my whole story about how I got to where I am now as a student rep on the state board. And that role itself is very special because Arkansas doesn't have that or has anything close to that. And so it really hit a lot of spots to a lot of teachers who really wanted, they came up to me who really wanted that to be implemented and that it could work out. So I'm going to try to reconnect with them and see if we can do that
Great.
in upcoming years. And I don't know why it's not, the video isn't
Yeah,
published.
they haven't published
I
it.
know.
Huh, well, I'd like to see that.
Because otherwise I would have sent it out ages ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you do get it, push it out. and we'll-
Yeah.
Great.
Sure. And anything going on at the state board that we need to be thinking about?
State Board of Education right now, we got our new student representative. He's cool. And we were just working on Act 46 changes for independent schools and the whole specific rules as to how things work around independent schools and the way that they're going to renew their contracts and how we look at them. Otherwise, it's the whole like 3-year cycle thing. We look at schools. And then Act 46, we're getting merger proposals. Soon it's going to be regular deadline in December, I believe. And when you guys put in your guys' proposal and request, I have to abstain. So
Well,
Sure,
you
they'll
won't.
say
It's
yes.
not due until November 2017.
2017, okay.
So you may not
I
see
mean,
it.
if I see it, I have
Maybe
to
you'll be
abstain.
ex officio or something on the state
Yeah.
board.
I'll be like,
Will you be done
Say
when
yes.
your term is done?
my term is done when I graduate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Get it behind us.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Thanks,
Great.
Ringo.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very
Okay.
much. Go rest.
Wow.
Yeah, will do.
Rest, get yourself back on track.
I'm so tired.
And let's see. So we have now, we'll move down MOU with the city folks. If you guys want
Come
to
on.
drag up
Come
a chair.
on.
No, come on over.
No.
It's great to
No,
see y'all.
Nobody sits in the back row here.
The seat's a little warm.
And there's raspberries over here. We
Oh
can
yeah,
move them
best
around
seat.
the table.
Best seat.
We got seats right here
There's
that are
one
open
here.
too.
Get a couple in front row as well.
Come on over.
Thank you for the pencil.
Yeah, right.
You
need her. That's what we put up with, though.
Good, how are you?
No, you're fine. You're fine. All right, so for the next section
that's
here,
right.
it is discussion and approval of the city and the school MOU. I'd like to thank again Sean and I think Ray and Deke probably before that to get the piece started and fine-tuned again. I can't thank you guys enough for staying with this thing, making sure that the city and the school both are making sure that all the tax dollars we do collect are put to the best use. No duplication. I think we've taken out as much of the duplication as we can. I mean, there's probably more that we just haven't found it yet to be able to get to this point. Kids go to city programs, they hear the same words that they hear in school. It must be haunted by that, but it is a very consistent piece that I think the kids in the city need, and it works well. So, any other discussions? Any thoughts on where to?
If I might, Mr. Chair.
Please.
No, we will also want to extend a great amount of gratitude, certainly to both of you two gentlemen for working so hard on the agreement. Ray, thank you very much, and Deke before. And I think beyond the technical piece on the coordination of resources and everything, we're really pleased with the spirit of the agreement too, and what it stands for, and how hard we feel both staffs have worked to uphold the spirit of that coordination around providing the people of Winooski with the best services we can. And want to thank Kirsty in the back too, because I know you do a great deal as well in terms of linking up services and making sure there is that continuity.
Yes.
And we're really proud of the work. I think it's okay to say that you guys do. So thanks very much for what you do to make the community a great place to live too. So kudos to you guys, and I couldn't agree more. Really excited to continue this type of relationship and this type of conversation. Thank you.
I think one of the beautiful things about Winooski, one of the many beautiful things, is this relationship. You know, school and city coming together for all of our families, all of our kids, our whole community. And I like that you use the word spirit, because it really just resonates out of this memorandum of understanding. You know, that we are here for everyone, and the more efficient we can do, and the more intentional we are, the better for all of us. Yeah, it's so lovely.
And I think the only real change we've had in here is an update on the finances based on around the SRO, which
Right.
is going to be a changing point each year anyway. So
We fixed a long-standing number issue that's been on 3 of them.
Yeah, there's a
We finally got this
Coding or
year,
whatever,
where we had number 1 and then number 1 again.
I saw
So
that. Yeah, one and
Now
one.
we've
they're all
got number
top
2.
priority.
2 gold medals.
Man, innovation never stops.
If I can just quickly too, just Sean and I were at a meeting. We've spent a lot of time together today, but at a meeting early this morning and with some partners in Burlington, and I think it was really refreshing to be having a really high level conversation with the city and the school at the table, and having partners from Burlington there, noticing the things that are happening here and desiring to emulate that. That's such a different place than I think this community was in, even honestly 5 years ago, and that speaks to the work of both of these bodies and all the many people that have been involved, staff level, volunteer level, etc. It's making a difference, and I think people are noticing that, and that's fantastic. And I think it's only the tip of the iceberg, frankly, which is really awesome and exciting. So.
And I think too, we celebrated the consent agenda was all the summer programming that was offered to all the kids across this community. It was vast, and it couldn't have happened without city-school partnerships. So not only are people outside of hopefully Chittenden County noticing what's happening here, is the kids are feeling it. And they're feeling supported, and they're feeling cared for, and engaging in new and different things together. It's really cool.
And I do have to note that our other two members regret not being here. One is in Iceland and one is on a long planned vacation, so their absence is by no means a reflection on value too. They wanted me to extend that.
Who's in Iceland?
Nicole.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's good for her. Yeah, so we do have a copy here, so I think you guys need to bring this to, or let me start with any other adjustments, any other thoughts about anything that would be updated in here? Take it as is. Okay, we'll vote on that in a second, or to approve. From a, we'll each have a copy of this at some point, but we can all sign this one, get a blank that we can then sign later for yours.
Great.
Okay. All right, so if there's no other discussion here, I would accept a motion from the board to accept the MOU as written.
So moved.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Adopted. So we will, matter of fact, while you guys are here, we might as well just pass the
Yeah.
Should you
signature.
put motion to approve the adoption of?
The adoption of the MOU as written. Yep.
Thank you.
We'll start from
Mr. Mayor?
You want to
Thank you.
send the same pen around, Mr. Leonard,
That-
as you come back
Oh,
through?
good. I
We'll
need
just
it
keep the
with
same
me.
pen with it.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
A formality, but I got used to that with these guys passing the diplomas around and always having a pen in the envelope so they don't look black and blue.
Oh, that's a great idea, yeah.
It's not a subject of your education being black and blue. That's just, bad.
Well done.
Went to school.
It's the vibe you give off, you gotta be careful of.
My only complaint about tonight is I think we might have some counselors asking, can they also leave when they graduate? Do they get off the plane?
Yeah, well, there you go, that's relative.
I was thinking more, what's Rainbow doing when she's done graduating?
Yeah.
That's cool, we've got plenty of commissions and boards. And
Yeah,
everything
you
else
you
can sit
will,
on.
if wherever she ends up, she will be involved somewhere doing
I think
something.
overachiever
I
was
think she'll
overstated.
run the place.
It's amazing.
She's an impressive human
I'm
being.
gonna have to follow her in a speech. I am good.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for you, man. So bad.
Yeah.
Plow through it.
Okay.
So, all right. So we
Bravo.
will. Our next time together is in the second week of October. So if you can get a signed copy from you guys when you adopt it, back to Sean. We'll sign it and then have Sean get it back to you at that point. Just the other two. The other two we'll get when we get there.
Great.
Awesome. Look forward to more.
Thanks
Of
for
the
coming
same. We
over,
have
Ray.
to get together as well, you and Ray and Sean and I at some point, and just make sure we're looking forward with an eye back.
Or
Just keep the flow moving.
You can
that's-
always tell when the pin's mine.
He didn't know
Which end I touched.
because he let me.
All right. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys
Thanks
for
for
coming
having
out.
us. Thanks for hosting.
Great to see y'all. Thank
Good to see
you.
you guys.
Have fun driving.
All
Will.
right. Yeah, thanks so much.
See you soon.
Take care. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Brian and Brian. Seth, we'll meet up with you on the street somewhere.
Bye-bye.
All right. Let's see. We have
Brian.
effectively.
Flag. Flag.
Flag.
Remember?
Okay.
He's a Notre Dame fan.
Moving right along, we're now down into the policies. So we got alcohol and drug testing. Oh,
right.
I did want to note up front before we even get started on this, that we have completed on time and on schedule our 3-year update of all the required policies. So we're on our now next loop around. So I thank Sean for keeping us on track and focused to that end. I think a lot of folks can't say that they do get to them actually
Well done.
in reality in 3 years. So it's a
So I have a
testament
quick
to
question
focus.
about these before we even start.
Yes.
After our conversation at the retreat about policies that are required, is this a required policy by the state?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Both
so
of
do
these
we,
are.
These two.
should we have to modify it, or should we just keep it as simple as the state?
Yeah, and I think we left both in. I think we're starting to get to the point where most of what we have now is the VSBA's version.
Right, because
Adopted and modified to have our name in it and any other.
but shouldn't we try to stay as strictly to what they have?
Right,
Without
I mean,
too
I
much
think,
modification, other
yeah,
than
and
putting our
getting
name
into
on it.
both of these policies, both of them reflect almost exactly
Right.
the model policies.
I was having a hard time finding any differences.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, this reads the same. That's the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really a matter of looking at legal references and making sure that those are up to date and things
Okay.
haven't changed and so forth, which in both of these cases they have not.
Great.
Yep, that's the biggest thing, making sure the legal references stay
Yeah.
in tune. I think the one question I had is whether you're good with, I mean, the procedures are yours, whether they still align, and do you review those as well on a
Yeah,
period? Do you do the same
Yeah.
kind of review cycle as we
Yeah.
go through these?
right.
'Cause that's really where the rubber hits the road, is in the actual procedures. When you get to the end point of having to go through these, you've followed the procedures. And, do we have the backing that we need to do what we
And
gotta
with
do?
these two, the procedures are practically in the policy on pupil privacy and rights, and for the drug and alcohol testing, those are in state and federal law. And in the references there in the Employee Testing Act and so forth, and we're, with the drug and alcohol testing, because we only employ 2 people who do part-time driving. And the
Right.
rest of it is covered through our contract with Mountain Transit, where they have that all
Who
built in.
does the piece? Okay.
Yeah.
The only update I had on either one of them is 5.1, the policy on pupil privacy rights,
Yep.
under administrative responsibilities, item 3. Says arrangements of protect.
protect.
2. So it's
Thank you.
just semantics more than anything
Yeah,
else,
that's
but I
good.
think the rest of it was pretty straightforward. Any other discussion on these two? Okay. So I would this is just discussion on these first two, so we'll see those in
They'll
the
come back in the
consent
consent
agenda the
next
next
month.
time as is.
Yep.
All right. Good. So next item here then, under governance investment, to have determining the board governance budget for next year is kind of in advance of getting the regular budget in place. Do we have the dollar amount that
It's about $6,000 that's available.
that's in the budget, and do we know what we spent in the FY16 out of that?
You spent a little under 2.
And we did a community dinner.
Yep.
We did,
You did the
Because we
board
have some
development
to Atlanta
with
to
training.
go to.
Yep,
We
we had
had-
training sessions.
so,
Okay.
there is, I get to your point, not that that's a bad thing. There is the available, any questions about changing the 6K or just leaving it there and doing, I don't want to just spend it frivolously, but I think
No, I
good
think
education for us
it's
is
huge.
a big deal.
Yeah.
So,
And it shows that
there's-
we use it efficiently, you know. I
yep,
think
are we
that's good,
being,
yeah.
is there other things that we could do? And that goes back to your comment about other training we could have. So
Right,
there is
but if
that
the-
availability if we can find it. So we'll keep with the 6K that's in there,
Okay.
knowing that we can certainly do the community
Yeah.
dinners without, I mean, that's all part of this budget, right?
Right.
Comes out of the
Good,
same
Yeah.
good.
place. We have Val facilitating some of our sessions, which is, to me,
Yeah.
we don't get any better than that
Sounds
for the
great.
dollars that we spend. That's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah, totally. Given that it's a big communication year, I wonder if there's something we want to do related to communication with that
Mhm.
$6,000. Communication and outreach.
Yeah.
At least just to know that we do have, because what we've been giving ourselves a lot of education.
Yeah.
I think that we do, you know, I certainly prefer in some ways education outside of the board meeting, mostly because I like to immerse myself in it versus it being like squeezed in.
It's hard,
and,
yeah.
you know, so just my brain works better that way, like on Saturday's retreat. With that said, we at least know we do use the money. We don't use it all, so therefore there is reserves in our budget for outreach as we see fit, as it emerges, as this whole communication plan and strategic plan sort of plays out, where we could put those dollars.
And being
Because we
one
have
of
dollars
our,
to put there.
yep, and being one of our primary objectives
Yeah.
is certainly a place that we would want to put it.
Right,
So,
right,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so we'll carry that forward. Again, as part of our annual
Yep.
agenda is to discuss that topic, to make sure we are doing enough education without shortchanging ourselves too much, so. All right. And then, so we added a 7E at this point, and that is committee assignments. Jen has come and asked if we could rearrange the negotiations committee, which was Jen and I for the last year anyway. And Jen, you were on the year before that as well,
The
right?
year before that, the year before. So
Oh.
thank you for your service on the
Yes.
negotiations committee. Huge.
Thank
Three of
you.
them.
Three.
Yeah.
Nice work.
And
Yep.
the support staff.
Yeah.
And so in order to fill that, we certainly need 2, can't have 3.
Yeah.
I would accept a nomination for someone to end up on that negotiation committee.
I nominate Matt.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, so I think we should approve that. All those in favor of approving Matt to the negotiations committee? Aye.
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 Looking ahead.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you, Matt.
yes, thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Welcome
It,
aboard.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, get your fins on, and we're ready to go.
I have lots of information and papers if you ever need anything, just let me know.
That would be great.
You
I'd
don't
appreciate
need
that.
a motion, an individual motion?
We may, actually.
I
Yeah.
thought they did it.
No.
I
Well,
made
there was a
no, I
nomination,
nominated.
right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
can I make it? Do you have to make it? Yeah, I move to put Matt on the negotiation committee.
With that motion on the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We are following our process.
That's what we
That's
need.
probably the weak spot here.
Good eye, good eye.
Thank you. Somebody got to keep track of us.
Well, when you were trained.
I appreciate that, somebody keeping me on task. Okay, great. And then, so moving down into section 8 at this point, board monitoring report. We are rolling around again in a monitoring report, so I would accept any discussion on that. Whoops.
This is
On that?
the superintendent.
This is the superintendent
Yeah.
monitoring report, sorry, for the accountability of the superintendent 3.2, financial conditions and activities.
2.3?
Yeah, 2.3.
Yeah.
So this is this is the second time that I've done this report, so there is not a ton of new information in there except for updating the years, for example, in number 1 around the audits. And throughout the report, if there's references to FY15 or FY16 compared to 13 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no areas that I've changed the compliance response.
Yep.
And updated the letter of support from Rebecca Goulet, our
And
finance
that's in
manager.
here, yeah.
And updated that with the 2016 summer projects and so forth.
Hey, number 14, in your evidence, you said there's 5 active tuition waivers for dependents of district employees.
Yes.
Silly question, but which way is that going? That's people whose children are in the district but go elsewhere, or the
No,
other way
so
around?
that's the other way. So it's
Okay.
teacher, it's staff members who are employed here, obviously, and then their children come to the school tuition free.
Gotcha. Even though they live in a different district.
Correct, because even though we can count them, we don't get money for them because they reside somewhere else.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's an interesting indicator of good health, I'd say.
That's a huge indicator.
5.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh.
3
that-
different families, 5 students.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Is that consistent with past years, more or less?
It's gone up in the last couple of years. When I first got here, it was 2 or 3, and then it's gone up 1 or 2 each year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember you saying, Mike, you were excited about the time when that would happen more and more.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good problem to have, or a good indicator, I guess, of
Yeah.
things. Hate problem.
Can I ask a question? Do these monitoring reports go on our website?
They do.
They do,
They're
because
attached under the policy on the policy page.
Great, because I think that reading through this financial conditions and activities, when you really read each 14 subheadings underneath of like how we're caring for the community's money,
Yeah.
it is really important to read this report if you have any questions about it, because
Yeah.
it is thorough and
Pretty thorough.
detailed with evidence to back up that the monies are being cared for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
the dollars are being well spent.
I do have, I have two items. One under section 9 is that 15-16 school year at the bottom of evidence.
Oh, yeah.
The very last section of evidence. Is that the 15-16 school year or 14-15?
No, because we don't have the audit yet.
Ah, okay. That
So
was my
actually, the
timing.
auditors were just here this week doing their first 2 days of digging in, and, so that draft will be coming in the next 6 weeks or
Perfect.
something,
Yeah,
so.
timing issue. Great, thanks. But I do have, so the other one that I have then is the interpretation of section 8 is the one
Okay.
that I wanted to talk about.
Debt.
The report as a whole then goes with, and I'm going to read from the top and then that section specifically. So the whole header here is with respect to the actual ongoing financial conditions and activities, the superintendent shall not cause or allow the development of financial jeopardy or material deviation of actual expenditures from board priorities established in the ends policies. Section 8 specifically then says, with regard, and so it goes in the way all of these do. It says, further, without limiting the scope of the foregoing by this enumeration, the superintendent shall not, and the not in this case then is, shall not incur debt in an amount greater than can be repaid by certain otherwise unencumbered revenues within 60 days. The interpretation is, I interpret this to mean the superintendent shall not permit the accrual of debt that cannot be repaid within 60 days. The piece I think that might be missing is, and I don't know how to incorporate it, but the piece is with, by certain otherwise unencumbered revenues. The way the interpretation is written, it's any debt that can be repaid in 60 days, even if using already encumbered funds. So it's not, it doesn't really specifically state using unencumbered revenues from somewhere else. So this one could mean that the interpretation is I can use any funds I want. Then it goes back down into the evidence that would say that if it did, so to the top end, it hasn't happened. So
Right,
it's
right.
not an issue.
Yep.
But what I'm looking at is had it happened and used, doing the financial shell game that says I'm going to move these around, I'm already encumbered these funds somewhere else, and I'm going to use them, then you're getting into a shell game that we would have to be careful with as a board. So I'm wondering if the interpretation would incorporate the use of unencumbered.
The otherwise unencumbered.
Right. Go ahead, Jen.
Give me an example, because
So, yep. So Sean would go out and take on debt for
New parking lot.
$15,000 for paving a parking lot or something. And get that $15,000 out of the food service funds,
Which are
to re-
encumbered.
which
funds.
are encumbered because you know you're going to use them for the food service later. Be able to potentially repay them back, but if something happens in the meantime, you're using funds that are already accounted for somewhere else. If you take them from a fund that we have not used nor encumbered, I don't even know, you can come up with one of those right off the
Yeah.
top, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But someplace where the funds haven't already been accounted for or used, or will be used later on. I think it's a fine change, but.
I think it is too. I mean, to me, the interpretation actually is broader than the language of 8.
Yeah.
Because it's limiting in 8 to certain otherwise unencumbered revenues, and in the interpretation, it's saying the accrual of any debt
Yeah.
that can't be repaid within the 60 days. So to me, that means it doesn't matter whether it's encumbered or unencumbered.
But you're saying, but Mike, you're saying if you could fool around with other encumbered funds,
To pay it back.
if you were so inclined.
Right. And that's taking a risk with the money that you are going to be able to repay it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but if something happens,
Right.
we're
Right.
left holding the bag on that
Right.
particular.
I'm waiting for that special ed grant that I thought that I applied for. I'm pretty sure I'll get. I might not. In the meantime, I'll just borrow some food service money and I'll refill that bucket when the special ed grant comes that I think I'm going to get, but I might not.
Right.
So I'm thinking in the interpretation, maybe
You-
adding the encumbered.
Well, don't you have?
Let me go ahead. I'm
Because
sorry.
basically the part of policy governance, if don't get me wrong, is telling him what he can't do. Basically, he just can't break the law. So isn't that? I don't know. I guess I think that would be delving too much into the means, because we would be able to pick that up through budgeting, through the bills, and how those all come through. And he would have to report out of compliance if he weren't paying money back.
Yeah, but this would, depending on the circumstances, this wouldn't necessarily be outside the law. It could be, it wouldn't necessarily be considered a crime, but it could be bad financial practice.
But do you have like a set of things you do?
Well, there's internal controls and
Exactly,
procedures that are in
so-
place, right.
It's all in place. So I guess I think one of the things when you do policy governance is you have to keep it in a broad spectrum when it comes to stuff like that, because you don't want to limit what he can or can do.
Right, but the policy though says you cannot incur debt in an amount greater than can be repaid by otherwise unencumbered revenues within 60 days. This is very specific that says if you're going to do that, it has to be with funds that aren't spoken for somewhere else already, but the interpretation doesn't say that.
So you fix the interpretation.
And so it's more of an interpretation. Nothing else has to really change, except I think the interpretation.
So
Adding
let
that
me,
phrase,
has
by
to be
adding
a-
that same phrase,
Yep.
it seems like a reasonable solution.
Right. I
so,
think
and
as
that's where, you know,
simple as that.
in doing these, sometimes it feels too robotic because you're basically in your interpretation are restating.
Cutting and pasting. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
I know it definitely looks
You know,
like
and
that.
so I wonder, you know, I can't actually remember back if that was the case with this or not. But what I'd like to do is take this question back and talk to some of my colleagues who write these reports as well and see what their response would be to that, and then include that next month in my report as you know, or maybe it doesn't go into consent, but it comes back for more discussion before approval.
I think that'd be helpful, because I do have to say that I found your interpretation much clearer than the way number 8 is written. And I was like, oh, that's what that means. Because certain otherwise unencumbered is a very confusing phrase. Like, why bother? What is certain otherwise? I mean, which certain ones implies some but not others, but we don't know which is which according to here. So there are some unencumbered things that you could use, but other unencumbered ones you couldn't use if there are certain otherwise unencumbered funds.
And it's entirely fair to look at the policy itself.
Yeah.
The way the policy is written, I would argue that the interpretation, I don't know if it needs to be adjusted, but it doesn't, in my mind, get quite to it.
But do you know what certain otherwise unencumbered funds means specifically?
Not the certain piece. Otherwise unencumbered,
Yes, right.
makes sense.
That makes sense. Or just unencumbered.
Right.
Yeah.
Why, I mean, I would suggest that we strike certain otherwise, which seems to have like, I feel like it's missing the asterisk that has 3 pages of fine print somewhere in there. It says
Nope,
certain
and
otherwise, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
it could be instead of changing the interpretation, you're
Right.
changing the
You're
language
changing
of
the
number 8
policy.
in the policy, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
that is certainly, and we've got to at that point be then ready to have a superintendent utilize funds that can be repaid within 60 days
Yeah.
from a fund that is already spoken for.
Well, that was my next
Financially,
question.
I think
yeah.
that is,
Right.
Well,
I
but
think that's a little reckless in the finance.
Well, and you can't, I
finance.
mean, you realistically, you can encumber and unencumber funds, you know, on a daily basis.
So
if
you can?
want.
Yeah.
Because that was my next question is, we make a budget a year ahead of time. Are there any unencumbered funds out there? Like everything is dedicated to something,
something.
isn't it?
Right. But
There's not-
say it's in April when we're reconciling everything.
Uh-huh.
You know, we're pulling back a lot of those encumbered funds because they haven't been spent.
I got you. So like
depending-
surplus kind of.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's moving, so there's a certain bit of movement between encumbered and unencumbered.
Right.
Depending on the spending
Yes.
and the cycle of what's happening.
And
Okay.
depending on the specific situation, whatever arose, you'd want to go back and get a snapshot in time of the
Here's our
budget
spending complete.
at that moment to see what was encumbered and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point was the debt incurred and what was that timeline?
Well, okay, right. So everything in your budget is encumbered. What becomes unencumbered is your sort of year to date. We're not going to spend that much. So
The realities of the
when
budget.
you had the
as you move
actuals,
through
yeah,
time.
okay,
Yeah, like we didn't spend all of our budgeted,
right,
right, so
We have
that's
4,000
unencumbered, right?
unencumbered or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay, that's helpful.
That's vacation.
Yeah.
So we're back to the certain,
somewhere
otherwise,
else.
do we do, because policy governance, there is that sense of that we get to reflect on these policies to make sure they still meet our needs and are speaking to what is most important for our community
Right.
and their dollars. So we do have the ability, if it makes sense, to strike the certain otherwise because it just makes it confusing. I mean, because what
Yep,
we're
we
really
gotta-
saying is the interpretation is most important in a way. That you will not permit accrual of debt that cannot be repaid within 60 days.
I view it as we are here to judge the interpretation against the policy as
Right.
written.
Right. So either we would have to change the policy.
Yep. Which at this point now we can take up. Do we bring back, do we bring in 2.3 to have a policy discussion
Which is
And
not a
an
bad
adjustment,
idea since we've been doing this for a
rather
while.
than,
Yeah.
you know,
Because this is an
working through the
interpretation
interpretation. This
discussion.
is- This is
And
just
compliance.
purely, is it the interpretation correct, and is the
And are we in
evidence
compliance then?
there, and do we feel that we're in compliance?
Right.
I would-
Not, is the policy correct?
Okay, then I
Question
would
for
say
Val,
two
too.
things. One, I would love to hear what your colleagues have to say about that, and I'm curious about the encumbering and unencumbering piece. And then I think we should probably bring it back and look at the policy and strike that phrase, which seems very tangled up. I don't know what the purpose of this.
Yep.
Unless maybe we need to ask our auditors. Maybe they know, because maybe they, I mean, it's almost like a lawyer or an accountant put it in there because it means something that us lay
Something
folk
that
just
no
don't
one else
get.
will understand.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I would.
Well, we have accountants, lawyers, because then they can interpret for us
Yeah.
what that specific meaning is.
Could you check that
I
out,
will.
Sean? Because
I got a couple of colleagues and auditor,
right,
and I'll get that and bring it back.
if they scratch their heads, let's strike it.
So in that case, then we can bring back 2.3 as a policy discussion in
think so.
October.
Yeah.
And based on the findings, we can have the discussion of, do we change the policy and work with the interpretation we got? If we change the policy, does the interpretation still fit? And move on from there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's the flexibility we have, so, all right.
Sorry, related to that, number 9, how is it different to conduct inter-fund shifting than to unencumber funds from one thing and move it to another? And maybe this is, and if you want to table that discussion for the policy discussion, that's fine, but.
So the same discussion with that one, with 9.
It might be. I'm curious if there is a difference, because my understanding of what we just talked about is what happens is you get to the end of the year, there's some money left over, so you switch it from one fund to another. But our policy says, you can't do that unless you talk to the board. Or at least that's the interpretation.
And are we talking, though, budget line items in the general fund, or are we talking about, like, there was a general ed fund, there was another fund, which is different
Yeah.
from line items in the general budget? Because you're able to switch
Right.
line items
Right.
in the general budget, as it makes sense, right? That's
Right. That would be intra,
Oh, yes. Thank you.
when you're talking
Yes.
about
Okay.
the
Nice.
operating budget. Inter
Right?
would be fund balance, capital reserve,
Yes.
operating,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
payroll, CFP.
Yep.
Yeah.
We learned that the other day. Okay, very good, Tori. Thank you. Well, there again, though, is that certain unencumbered phrase.
Yeah, it is, so it must
certain
mean
otherwise,
something.
Which makes me think that, it means something. All right. So I'm okay with the interpretations, and I would like a little help understanding what certain otherwise means, and if it matters, and if it doesn't, we should burn it.
Okay. All right. Good. I think that was all I had on that one. And you did have the business manager's letter in there this time, so
I
that
did.
works. We're moving right along.
Good financial discussion. Really digging into the details.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, way to pull that board education piece back out there.
Oh, it makes you feel like you actually got it done, right?
Trustee Cleveland.
All right, good. So we will bring that one back in October, as we normally do. And again, just to stay on track, we discussed 4 a year still. We'll probably get to, with some fine tuning, we get to 8, doing all 8 in a year, with some pre-inspection, and that way we can touch them all, but it won't take quite as much time.
Okay.
We'll have to figure out how to do that, but Val had some thoughts. All right, 8B, under the financial planning and budgeting piece, budget parameters for FY18. On part of the annual agenda is setting the starting point for some of the budget discussions we're going to have coming up. They're going to start looking at what we have and where the pieces and parts go, but having at least some level of starting point as to where to start with these things.
Yeah.
And I think in the spirit of what we're doing with the policy governance, I'm thinking just a very high level overall number, and let Sean and Rebecca and team figure out what fits inside of that. We've obviously got the open variables of the 2 negotiations that we're going to do with the support staff and the teachers that become an open piece that, budgeting and negotiating at the same time keeps you on your toes.
With the added complexity of the health plans changing midstream
Yeah.
Right.
in the next budget cycle.
Do you have an indication of the lovely gift we were giving from the Agency of Education last year in terms of caps and growth? Do we have any indication of what that landscape is gonna look like this year? If there's gonna
Have
be
not seen
any?
anything yet.
Okay.
Status quo is, for us, would be that we're good because we're X amount of dollars below the median spending level. Was that the last change?
Right. As long as it was below the average but I don't think we're tagged with any of that as far as starting point for this year.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
Not yet.
okay.
That's
Okay.
Right, they
was a one-year
repealed
deal?
that portion of it.
right.
Okay. All right.
So, given economic realities the past few years, to get the discussion started somewhere, I would say we'd be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5%-ish. Or,
Budget increase?
yeah, just kind of from a high level. You're certainly not going to go with 5. That's reckless on a good day. So I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts on starting points, or just to give Rebecca some kind of numbers to start working
target,
with,
yeah.
from which to make adjustments.
Yep.
I guess more than anything else.
Yeah.
Good fair starting point because everything is going to be movable from there.
I mean, it's, as far as lines in the sand, I don't think that's a bad one. I'd be interested to know if there were hot demands for one thing or another from you guys.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, there's always a percentage that has to go up anyways, right? Doesn't it have to go up just based on salaries?
Right.
Well,
But
we-
we're in the
Living
middle of
expensive.
we're in the middle of negotiation to try to figure that out as
Exactly.
well at the same time.
So I don't know if we should put a number on it until they have an idea of what the budget's gonna look like, just I mean, it could be an increase of 3% already, for all we know,
Yeah.
or
Right.
less or
But
more.
the one thing that you've got to be able to do, though, is have Rebecca go out making certain assumptions on the healthcare expectations with the numbers that she has, just to say, at 3.5%, when they come in the first time, they're going to have this number that says, okay, if we assume 3.5%, then, they're going to, other assumptions with the current healthcare, maybe some programs that have to move in or out, and then what else do you do? But it's a starting point for where do you even start putting the numbers together? Because otherwise, it's just an open nothingness.
Well-
You don't know where to even put the stick in the sand to start looking at the numbers.
Except that,
There's already an existing budget.
There's an
They're gonna
existing
know what their
budget.
needs are.
right,
So
you could
I
go
thought
either
that's,
way.
I guess I don't remember ever giving them, we don't want it to go more
Guidance.
than this. I think we've always had them bring it to us, and then we'll either be like, no, that's not acceptable, or
Right.
what else do you need?
I
Your
think-
wish list, and
Yeah, because I think this way, we get into less of the come in first pass with everything you want and go 8%. And then have us say, okay, well, that's, probably a little too much.
Well, maybe it's that help,
And then-
but I did like the idea that when we did sort of like if you said what 3.25 or something, I mean, it's like
2.5,
something like that, like a little bit above and a little bit less, like seeing what does that mean for programming and how does that still meet the needs of our changing population and changing needs.
Because it's a starting point for the first pass through of what we're looking at for a budget.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that,
I don't know.
makes sense. I mean, what you're asking the leadership team to do is to prioritize before they get here and not afterwards, basically, is what you're doing by trying to set that
Think
line.
about within a certain boundary condition, what
Mhm.
kinds of priorities you might set.
Has the budget director asked for that? Is that helpful to them to have that kind of theoretical model to draw from?
I think it's helpful to us to have some bumpers. I think what's always challenging is you're waiting on significant drivers all the time, whether it's the equalized pupil count, which is a really big one, whether it's the CLA, the healthcare costs, and then we've got the added limbo of salaries and being in negotiations. So, we start with the assumptions. We build it from there with some built-in assumptions that we share with the board, and that kind of gives us a baseline to start with. Yes, I think it's good to have some bumpers, but it's also if there are years, I think like there were a few years ago when I first got here, where we said we need to support students and teachers a little bit differently than we have been. And we added staff, and we really bolstered bolstered the budget. And now we're in a place where we have added staff, and we're in a good place. Unless there was significant shifts in numbers of students, I wouldn't foresee that. Where the staffing costs, which are 70% of the budget, are going to rise, are based on really negotiated terms.
And we have 2 contracts.
Right.
A lot of balls in the air.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, subject to change without notice, but where do you even start? If you got to guess everywhere all the way down through.
Yeah.
You have a starting place because you still have the overall budget.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think. I think we should try to, because the taxpayers are so good to the school, that we should try to be as frugal as possible without cutting corners, in my own personal opinion.
Yes, and
there's so much
remembering
changing.
that we're still funding well below the state average, each of our students, which is a testament to our frugality, but also a possible contributor to greater inequity between our students and others.
Very fair. Yep. All right.
Does that
Today
really
we've
answer
got to
your
pass a
question?
budget.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I think I hear some bumpers that will be helpful for Rebecca moving forward.
And I don't think we have to fine tune it any more than that.
No.
It's
Right,
just,
right.
Go with it from
Yeah.
there, and we'll
Okay.
see where we end up.
Yep,
Cool.
Great.
All right. number 2 of our, I don't know, what do we got? 12, 13, 14 policies that we
We have to interpret.
need to interpret ourselves.
We did this one.
I think I did. And
This
you,
is
did
pretty
you?
easy.
I
I
can't
don't
say.
know why I didn't
did
get
this
this
back
one.
in May,
Partial
and you might have
compliance.
touched it up.
This one is
I-
a super
I
simple
touched,
one.
It is a super simple one, and I still don't think I did a good job, but
You did
it was
fine.
my
It's
first.
perfect.
Well, why are we
Except that you put
partially
we
compliant?
report partial compliance.
Yeah.
I don't
Where's
know,
the
because
partial
I petered
compliance?
out at the end there, and I think that we were playing with that partial. There's no evidence there. Anyway.
Oh, because, so I
like
put the partial, I put the partial in there, and the reason that I
Right.
did that is because the
thank
policy
you.
itself says the board will view successful superintendent performance as demonstrated by accomplishment of board stated ends and avoidance of board prescribed means. I think the avoidance of board prescribed means are very well done because the interpretations that we've seen on the executive limitations are clear and well defined, and we've accepted them all. I think the accomplishment of board stated ends is not complete, period. It's not, we're not done.
Sure.
And
Yes.
we're not going to be done for
Right.
probably a couple of years. So the how do you get into compliance is continue on the path that we're on, do the health and wellness forum, get an understanding of what that really means,
Yeah.
or collective understanding of what that really means. We've done the college ready, career ready, and all that other stuff. So I think partial is okay.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that we're failing. It means that we haven't gotten there yet,
Yeah.
but we're on the way to get there. But I want to keep it that way so that we can later say, are we better off?
Yeah.
And are we there yet?
I get that. I'm wondering if accomplishment means, like we understand what it means and we're working toward that, or it means our students are college career ready, they're happy and successful and productive, and they're globally and locally engaged, 100%.
What's interesting to me is it sounds like very similar to the last conversation about my report.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is this should it be a policy review versus a interpretation? Because kind of what I hear being talked about is you can't really have accomplishment at board stated ends yet.
Right.
Right.
But
Or
also, could
ever.
you have a
Ever.
policy
If you're
change
constantly
that
changing
said
your ends and
demonstrated by indicators of progress toward or something like that?
Yeah, right. Or certain otherwise unencumbered ends, that we might want to.
I said in some.
I don't know. My feeling on that is
Certain.
I don't mind standing up and say we're not there yet.
Uh-huh.
No,
I
and-
gotcha.
I
No
agree.
concern.
I'm not disagreeing
And
with
I'm
you.
not sure when in an organization are you truly ever like I
That's-
like the
that's what I'm
idea of
saying, yeah.
indicators towards or was achievement. I don't know. I think that
Yeah.
accomplishment of board stated ends is
So we have to have a plan then
When's that
to
happen?
be, to be
When's
when.
it be?
over. Like we've done our job. It's time to go home.
Shut the
So
door.
close the organization because we're done. We've just.
Right.
Well, so Sean's right. It sounds like we need to look at the policy.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying, Mike, is I'm okay with partial compliance because we're working on it. But the it that we're working on is defining the evidence and the means and the
Interpretation
methods.
and evidence to the
Yeah.
ends.
Right.
We've got some
right.
of them. Sean's brought the ones that we've had to forums where he brought the
Exactly.
interpretation and what we could use for evidence forward.
Yep, and I love it. But
So-
but I think that the way the policy is written, it makes you think that what it means is that all our students have achieved those things that we're hoping that they'll achieve. The way the policy is actually written, you know what I mean? And,
Yep.
and that's I think that's what Tori and Jen are saying about
Okay.
we're never going to make it because it's an
So
aspirational goal.
But the ones that we've
accomplishment of these
accomplished-
stated ends is almost impossible. Well, it is impossible.
Right, but the ones we've gotten, but he's bringing back, you just said it, he's bringing back the ones we have, like the career ready.
Yeah, but
So
even if you bring
those
them
are
back,
part- those are-
accomplishment of those things is.
Not attainable.
I mean, it's aspirational. I mean, it's like we're all we're going to do our best to get every human being as far down that road as we can, but it doesn't mean that we're for circumstances that are well beyond our control, or even
Right.
some that are in our control.
And what we talked a lot about is building capacity for measurement.
Yes, right.
And that doesn't speak to that in this policy, that a part of being able to monitor your ends, your board stated ends, is being able to build the capacity for measurement and for indicators
Yeah.
so that there is a constant,
Checking in.
you know, that to me is
Yeah.
more of the meat of the work of moving towards board stated ends versus the actual accomplishment of it is to be able to have the indicators and measurements to be able to see where we're headed, make adjustments, and, you know, navigate that path.
Okay. So rather than wordsmithing it here, we can bring that one back. But I think that the general, so that we have a jump on it, I think the general consensus then is a wording that goes more toward having evidence for the components of the ends and showing progress
Exactly.
in
There
those.
needs to be progress, yeah.
Yeah, clarity in what they are, clarity in how we're going to measure it, clarity
Yeah.
in what progress we're making toward those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And I think that's exactly why we do these. And That's
Right.
why I want to make sure we pull them in
Smart.
front is how do we fine tune what it is we have and make our focus clearer. So we will bring that one back. And partial compliance is not a bad thing. It evokes discussion.
Yeah.
So just on the policies here, I have set up the format for 4 or 5 others, trying to get some of the 3s and some of the 4s in here. What I'd really like to do is be able to stay on track this year to get these things, as many as we've got in the agenda, done so that we can get to the point where we can then have these other discussions of, you know, are we in compliance or not, and is the policy as written good? I struggle with the thought that if you have changing parts and pieces, superintendents, administrators, board members, board mentality, do you have a base in place that says this is what we're running to and these are the things that we do? If we can get these
Yeah.
compliance looks at behind us, we can then, you know, have a lot more leverage in pointing to these things. So we'll bring them back as we've got them in the agenda and see if we can get them done. All right, great discussion.
So just so I'm clear, so
Yep.
this one, should this be on October's agenda for further discussion, for,
Policy review.
The other one seemed like it only had a couple of areas that we're going to get some background information on. And this one here seems to be only 323, the
I
last
think it's
section. The other
fairly
ones are
simple.
pretty straightforward.
It is.
Yeah.
It
I think we'll do it in 10
needs
minutes.
some work, but I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that-
Does somebody want to take a stab at wording that so we don't have to do the wordsmithing on the fly in the meeting?
I'd take a stab at that.
Would you? Okay.
And it's going to sound like what I said.
Yep.
Good.
That's-
Clarity in what the ends are, clarity in how
Yeah.
to measure
It
them.
doesn't
and
have to be
clarity on our
complex.
progress.
And
No.
that second paragraph,
Matter of fact, if it's
it's
not,
more
it's
of
better.
a detail issue, is the whole fact that it says the Winooski School Board presents our monitoring report on our governing style policy with respect to the revisions, and it repeats policy 3.2.
Ah,
I mean, that.
that's
sort of this-
my cut and paste job.
Okay, there's a redundancy there. That
Yeah,
needs
no,
to
that's
be-
my cut and paste job. I can fix that. And that's in the master. Yep. Got a little aggressive.
so then it would
with
come back in October for a policy
Policy
change and, okay, approval of
And
a
at
new.
that point, I think,
Updated policy.
yeah, I think the interpretation is slightly different at that point,
Okay.
but not significantly so.
Okay, so then
You
it
bring-
could also possibly be, the monitoring report could also be approved.
Yes, if we want to take a stab at that,
So
because I
you
think
could
the
try to do both. next month.
interpretation may not
Okay.
change significantly.
great.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything else on that one? Thank you. Good discussion. This is what we paid for taking July off.
That was long.
No, but good discussion. It'll cut
Yeah.
down in the future. So last item here then, any community activities by board members?
Yeah, I went to the pool party, Myers Pool, like where you get to like put stickers and dots on like what sort of, did you go? Where-
Yeah, I did.
Discussion
Yeah.
about the pool.
That was super fun,
Lot
really
of
well
people?
done. Yeah, there was.
That's pretty passionate discussion on it.
Yeah, and the layout that they had and the way they got people engaged and being able to make, you know, preference, like to put preferences about was really thoughtful. It was a thoughtful committee.
folks on that
Mhm.
communication.
New city manager process, search committee process underway, community dinner
You're on that.
coming up on next Wednesday.
Wednesday. Oh.
Yeah, not exactly on it, but I'm participating
In it?
Yeah. Not as a board member.
Okay. No, obviously,
As
yeah,
a-
we're right. But as a community member,
As a
that's great.
facilitator.
Yeah, as a hired gun in that case.
There you go.
But it's on, and it's a great opportunity for board to talk about what they want in a city manager. And it seems to me like one of the things that we, given the meeting tonight, and for, since I've been here 3 years, I would love to hear board voices there saying, we want a city manager who's willing and able to work closely with other institutions in town, like the school.
So would this be a good time for a discussion on, like, should we be, as a board, going to, like, the community has lots of little committees of their own that there's other things in the city going on that is open to the public.
Commissions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So should we be appointing someone to go to some of those as a representative of the board? Like the one that's like with the library, that does the library. It's
Community services.
is that the one?
Well, there's community services, there's public works.
Yeah. Just different ones. Just because if we're trying to get out into the community more, be seen, be heard, getting our messages out, and receiving messages from the community of what, they want to see more of the school, shouldn't we be going to some of these?
Yeah, I think.
Just wondering. It's just
Yeah,
a
I think
conversation.
at that point, from what I heard, maybe I may be wrong, is that you are a member of the board, but you are a member of the commission.
Or no,
But it's
just
not
as a board
necessarily
member going
completely
to the commit. They're usually open to the public.
Yeah. Right.
So as a board member,
Yes.
just sitting representing the board, not even saying anything, but getting in the information and reporting it back to the board. There's a health and wellness one too. So,
Yeah.
like the senior center, stuff like that. Just areas of trying to connect the community more with the school.
Yeah, that's our whole
I
mission.
think it's a lot to ask of you guys to do that stuff.
Well, I'm going to have some free time, so.
If you want to, and yeah.
That'd
I
be
think-
great.
And those are nighttime
you brought it up,
meetings,
and I
which is
feel
why
like-
I'm
Yeah.
bringing it up. Is
Yeah,
But I
because
also
and you brought it
think
before,
part-
and I think it's a great role for you as well. And I think that for those, I know like other, now that you're not on negotiations too, but it would be just a.
Right. Well, yeah, I need something to do, but I'm passionate about our community and our different sections of it. So I would like to be able to start going to these meetings, finding out where we can really help our students that really need more support systems.
That-
And
Yep.
if that means just trying to get an ear of what's going on in the community more, figuring out where other resources are that can help, you never know. You never know. If it's during the evening hours, then I have more time to do
Right.
that. But because obviously I can't do a lot of the day ones. My job doesn't let me leave the house.
I just want the board to know that, Deke and I had met monthly. Ray and I are picking that right up. So if there's significant things that are happening, that would be my role. Obviously, it would be to report to you guys.
Well, you can even tell me which ones are good that would impact the school for
Right.
that I should go to, if that's something you guys would
Yeah.
like to be reported
Yes.
on.
It can't hurt if you got the time.
And there's
You
a
get the
lot
time,
of different ones, because I know even the city, they have commissions, but some of them aren't theirs. But they have a representative from the city council go to them.
Mm-hmm.
So those are like ones that we might want to tap into also.
Yeah.
There's
I
a
think it would be
lot of
interesting
things
to
that
get
go
clear
on
about
that I am.
Ray's- There's the commissions that were charged, I think, by the council.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there's other committees that you're also talking
That's
about.
exactly
Okay,
it.
'cause
There's
I'm not sure
different
what
ones.
all those other committees.
But
what
Ray
those are.
would know. They would have that, because if they're putting people in them to go monitor and see and just get feedback. he may know. And I'm just saying, there's a lot of stuff that I've like heard that I never even was aware of that goes on in our community that I'm sure impacts students. So I don't want to go into detail, but
So when's the community dinner for the city manager meeting?
21st,
What time?
September 21st, 5:30.
Oh, wow.
5:30 is the dinner, and usually what happens is, people get dinner and then talk for a bit, and then the meeting starts. So the
Yeah,
meeting probably start
okay.
at 6 or so.
Great.
Yeah, should be a fun one. We at O'Brien Center.
try to go.
We had talked at our board retreat very briefly about engaging the community around opiate abuse and the ravages that it causes. You guys know for a little while I was working with the partnership, the coalition, Winooski Coalition for Safe and Peaceful Communities. And I know that Kate is very interested in continuing that work. I started traveling at one point. I had to stop doing that. But I'm wondering if we want to take a role there, a leadership role in the community. It would be a big lift, and it's something that we'd have to think about and be ready to engage with. But to take kind of a leadership role in unifying the various institutions around town to make things happen. I think of like the Rutland model, where the police chief said, "We're all getting together and we're going to do something." And in town, I know there's new leadership coming to the city. There's brand new leadership in the police department, or not brand new, but newish anyway. And it's, there's no sort of centralized piece where it's happening. And I don't know if we want to take that on or not.
The impact is
It's
felt
real. Yeah.
very stiffly here for sure.
Yeah.
So, in addition to that, is that there's what's just been formed is called the Chittenden County Opioid Alliance, and there are a couple action teams, and that's funded. There's $100,000 a year for the next 3 years from the UVM Medical Center Community Health.
Oh, great.
That's supporting that. It's a collective impact approach. The Chief Del Pozo is one of the key components or key leaders in that. I was asked and participated in the very first meeting yesterday of the prevention action team. But that's at a more community, but I think a lot of that is going to flow then now down into the city.
Yeah.
So it'll just be important to coordinate those two efforts.
Well, I certainly don't want to duplicate anything.
Right. It sounds like it may be already getting to what you're
Well, the
talking
Chittenden
about.
County group is not ready to, there's no action yet. It's really in the beginning planning stages of stuff, so.
Well, and the struggle down there, we had some great conversations and some great participation, but it was always, who's got the traction for this? Where's this going to live, and who's going to do something? I want to do something. I also don't want to go around spinning everybody's wheels because our time is all super important.
I agree. There's a lot of talk, but what's being done?
It's the who's driving it.
Yeah, that
becomes
too.
part of the issue. Who has the energy and the time?
Yeah.
Which I like the thought. Man.
Yep. Yep, I know. So.
But you at least keep us
on
updated
that.
on what's going on in the Chittenden County Alliance.
I will.
Opioid
And then that
Alliance.
way we can continue to keep our eye on it.
Yeah, I'm sitting here. There's kind of two important things that weren't in the report because they just happened. There was this, and then Jen, I was thinking about when you were talking. At the October 3rd City Council meeting, the architects that they've been working with are going to come and bring drawings of options for moving City Hall down to the O'Brien Center.
Yeah. Right.
And doing, on one end a retrofit, and on another end, a multi-million-dollar
'Cause
reconstruction.
they've outgrown their little building.
Sure have.
So that I think is probably a good example of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It'd be really important
For
for the board to keep in touch with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Well, maybe Sean, one thing you could do when you get back there is communicate the sort of board's interest in contributing somehow to whatever.
Being available.
Yeah. I don't know.
I can do that.
Yeah, it certainly has an impact. You see it.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Anything else? Any thoughts for the next agenda other than our normal monthly topics? All right. No executive session. Clean start to the year. All right. At that, I would accept a motion to adjourn if there are no other business.
So moved.
All those in favor?
All right.
Hi.
Aye.